Hello, welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. I'm Lauren Hubele interviewing Jyoti Wind. Today we will be exploring the topic of power. Jyoti, would you be willing to open up this space for us?
Absolutely, Lauren. Thank you. Grandmothers of the East, spirits of the East, we call to you. We ask for your insights, showing us things we don't happen to see. Grandmothers and grandfathers, spirits of the South, we call to you. We ask you to help us place our feet on the right path and the right direction for us. Grandmothers and grandfathers, healing spirits of the West, we call to you. We ask your assistance in receiving what is ours. Grandmothers and grandfathers, wisdom keepers of the North, we ask for your wisdom to be able to see what we look upon. Grandfather Sky, keeper of the starry night, we ask for your protection. Grandmother Earth, remind us of our mercy and compassion. And to that wise being inside of us that informs us, may that being also be present. So I have a piece I'd like to read. It's called Practice This. When life tells you things may wind down, love more than anything. Let the animosities go. They are so not worth remembering. Toward the end, the only currency you possess is how you have loved.
Beautiful words to start us out with, Jyoti. Where are you going to take us today?
Well, I thought I would talk about power and self-love. You know, I'm sometimes really surprised at the lack of self-love in humanity, and it's a hard-won place to love yourself, because there's so many things in life that kind of tell you you're not good enough, or tell you that you should do this or should do that. And people buy it. We all do, you know, at some point in our lives. And then in that process, we wind up giving our power away, and we wind up seeing ourselves as less than. And so I've been thinking about this, and it just reminds me of the myth about the Selkies, you know, the seal people who, especially the women, the female Selkies, who could swim ashore and unburden themselves of their seal skin and have human form. And the myth is that a Selkie was sunning herself on a rock. This is a very abridged version. And a man came along and was very attracted to her, and he saw her pelt lying there, and he picked it up and he hid it away. And so he wanted her, and he wanted to start a family with her, and he wanted her as his wife. And so she was bound to him and bound to her human form, even though the ocean called to her and her Selkie family called to her. She was bound to him. And then years went by, and they had a family. And one day he was out hunting or fishing or whatever, and her daughter was rummaging through a trunk, and down at the very bottom, she found the seal skin, and she gave it to her mother. And her mother was delighted, and yet her heart was broken, She put her Selkie suit back on and dove into the ocean, leaving her human family behind. But she was with her family, she was with her kin. And so it just reminds me, the way it speaks to me is that sometimes we give our power away, and we live among strangers. You know, we live among other people, and then somehow our power is given back to us, or we find ways of regaining it. In the legend, the woman's daughter, her female downline, gave her back her power and her sense of who she really was. And even though it broke her heart to leave her human family, she needed to be with her own people.
Hmm.
And as I was thinking about this yesterday or the day before, I was thinking about how in my own life I reached a moment. I mean, it was like a light going off. It was like a small epiphany when I was thinking about this, how at one point, even though I wasn't consciously aware of it, I was seeking my own people. And even though there was a leave taking, my destiny was drawing me elsewhere. And in order to find that, I had to support myself and love myself enough and trust life enough and my own path enough to seek it out.
Hmm. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Jyoti. The words that you've shared are so deep, and I can think of all different ways to take off with them. But I want to go back to where you started because I'm sure our listeners felt that jolt like I did of this using the words self-love and power together. Those aren't two words we often think about it as being similar or related. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think that when we learn to love ourselves, and that it's a step in our own spiritual growth, actually, it's not just a psychological place we pass through, but that in our own um, on our own spiritual path, that as we learn to accept ourselves and love ourselves, we also are stepping into our own power and taking our power back from what life kind of was throwing at us. You know, that expression, kind of like, what you think of me is none of my business. Because if we live our lives trying to please other people and trying to do things for other people to like us or to show up for us in certain ways that we feel like we need, we give ourselves away, and in that we give our power away. And in that taking back our power is also that element of self-love. And how do we love ourselves enough to stand for ourselves and say, I'm going to do this because this is the next step for me, or I'm going to love myself through all of this and through all my injuries and woundings, and realize that I'm exactly who I need to be. I'm a divine child, ultimately. I'm a piece of everything that's happening. I'm a piece of the creative energy. And why wouldn't I love myself?
Hmm. Yeah, big question, Jyoti. I'm glad you brought up the divine child because when I was listening to you, I thought, isn't that interesting? We're born the divine child, and as we come incarnate here, and we we have all our power right then. We have all of our power. We love ourselves. There's no reason not to. And then we go through life experiences that we begin to lose that from, in pieces, really, because of people that we interact with that don't have self-love.
That don't have self love and don't recognize us as a divine child, just see us as another human being that needs to be brought into line in the family system, so to speak.
But they also don't see themselves as the divine,
No,
right?
you can't give to another what you can't give to yourself.
And it makes me think of this idea of power over, power with, and how when there is no self-love, we have these tyrants, and they could be tyrannical parents or leaders in the world who, because they're so lacking in love for themselves, they are actually taking love away from the individuals they either have in their care or govern.
Yes, yes. So I think that, some of it's self-forgiveness, some of it's just ignorance, as in not knowing, we're raised by people that don't know to recognize that. We are raised to not recognize that divinity within ourselves. Um, and the way divinity is put forward through different organizations and stuff, there's always a price you pay, or some kind of something you have to give allegiance toward or go along with, even if it goes against yourself. And so finding ways to really love and appreciate yourself, I think, is really important. Just even in small steps, you
Yeah.
know, stopping the monkey mind of judging yourself, and of making yourself wrong, and just allowing yourself the luxury of non-judgment for a minute or two. It can start as simply as that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because that was my question. Is we all can't be so lucky as the Selkie to have a daughter hand us our suit again and off we go.
Right.
And that feels like a big leap for any of us out here feeling we've lost power, and regaining it in those micro steps.
Yes. And it is micro steps, it is bite-sizing things so that you're just incrementally taking small amounts as you go on your path. It's not usually some big um, emancipation. I guess divine intervention happens. I guess divine intervention is always happening in some ways, but not the Hollywood version of divine intervention. um, and so I think that holding that as something almost like a magnet, holding that desire in our hearts and our desire body to draw to ourselves opportunities and situations that will help us see who we really are, that will help us realize our worth, our place in the universe, our sense of self love. Because, an example I give sometimes is, if we're cells in a larger body, why would, in the larger body of the creator, let's say, whatever that looks like, um, why would your cell not love itself into the whole of the creation? Why would just one person's cell think of itself as wrong or ill or not in the right place at the right time? Why wouldn't it avail itself of the wonder of creation, let's say? Why wouldn't it fill itself with that divine love?
Yeah.
Why would it hold itself separate?
Yeah, but we do, right?
Yes, yes, and I think it's part of the evolution. I think that well, this is a metaphysical way of looking at it, that we devolved away from deity so that we could individualize and make our own choices and have that free will, so that we could voluntarily evolve back with intention and self-direction toward that oneness with deity.
Yeah. Yeah. So, say I woke up tomorrow and I wanted to live a day in the life of someone that was taking back their power. Give me some examples of how I might find those, the little micro steps.
Um, an intention to remain as conscious as possible, perhaps, like when you sit down to have breakfast, the old Zen way of looking at it. When I eat, I eat. When I breathe, or that kind of thing. And being just with the intention, not then beating yourself up because you didn't do it as long as you thought you should. No shoulds, you know. And perhaps depends on what kind of day you have. I mean, if you have a day where you have time and you have quiet, you could walk out into the woods and look at nature and what has been created for you, the world that has been created for you, and it's beautiful. The beauty is astounding sometimes. And just take it in and know that you are as much a part of that as the brook, the tree, the rabbit hopping across your path. That you're all part of this creation as much as anything else. And why would you have been created faulty when everything else is so beautiful? And just maybe having that as a background thought for the day, you know
Mhm.
maybe breathing into yourself and just picture yourself breathing in light and healing those cells in your body and healing those thoughts and those feelings that you've been taught is how life is, but isn't really.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's do a little meditation, little
Yeah.
guided meditation. Okay. So let's breathe out the stress of the day or the evening, wherever you are, and let go of having to get this right. It's just an experiment. And take a nice deep breath and just picture yourself on the top of a very high mountain. And spread out below you are green lands and maybe twinkly lit villages off in the distance, maybe a city landscape over by the horizon. But just it's like the world is at your feet, so to speak. And as you stand there, just maybe put your arms out to your sides in a gesture of, just receiving, and just intend that your heart is open and receiving this brilliant light of the divine, this brilliant light of creation that brings you into your own sense of divinity, your own filling yourself with light, filling yourself with missing pieces, filling yourself full to the brim of the love of your creator, the love of life, the love of the beauty of the world. And then you come back to yourself and you express your gratitude for what's been given. And then you come back to yourself and you come back to who you are, where you are, and maybe it's a little bit brighter inside. Maybe it's a little bit more heartfelt. Maybe it's a little bit more spacious inside where you've brought in the light and it's kind of made some space in there for you to bring in more love into your life, especially from yourself.
Thank you. That was beautiful, Jyoti.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
Anything else on this topic today?
No, I think that's it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, listeners, if you're interested in learning more about Jyoti and her work, I'd like to send you over to her website. Jyoti, where can they find that?
www.jyotiwindastrology.com.
Perfect. Great. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Lauren.